Welcome back, everyone. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 142. Today on the podcast, it is Thursday, June 6th. I'm Van Burnett, joined as always by Steve Gisueli. If you guys are joining on the live stream, welcome. If not, you guys can join us any Wednesday night. We're on Twitter at Wins Above Pod. I'm at Van_verified. Steve is at Stav8818. Got a fun show. First one in a minute that it's just me and Steve. You know, the OG combo, but Steve with the phenomenal stretch of guests. And tonight we're winding back the clock. Not only do we got the old 1-2 punch here, but we also have kind of a classic show topic here, April to May improvers and a Steve Gisueli patented spreadsheet to boot, where we're looking at a handful of different categories where players have risen from April to May, and breaking down a little bit of the under the hood stuff to see if we believe in it and whether we're kind of buying or selling the May breakouts, if you will. But Steve, good to be talking again. We're kind of right in the heart of the season. It feels like we're not so deep in the season to where fatigue is set in. It's not quite the dog days of summer. And got to say, a lot of the leagues are going pretty well. Like I told you off the show, I tried to preserve ratios in the home league and benched Nick Pivetta today for a gem against the Braves. So that one stung a little bit, but you know, you take your lumps throughout the season. And I got to say, these are the times when you just got to be happy that baseball's here and that we're having a good time. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's good. It's good just to be back. Just me and you. You're right. It's been a while since we've done one of these shows. And this is like our wheelhouse. I feel like this is kind of a topic that when we were brainstorming what this show was going to be, this is what it is, like a consumable way to look at advanced metrics mixed with some surface level stuff and make it digestible and actionable. And that's what we're doing here. I think it's a cool topic. Built another fun little spreadsheet. And I think I'm pretty sure we've done this like at least one other year in the past that we've had the show where we're looking at a time period that isn't necessarily the first month of the season where changes are obvious and stat lines are what they are, and they fluctuate so much in April, and you overreact to a guy batting 100 in a month or whatever. But if a player bats 100 in May and they had a really good April, you may not realize that, or, it may not be as apparent. But it's still interesting to look at because we overreact to all these things in May, right? Like, why wouldn't we do that in April? Not saying that you should, but there's just some interesting takeaways, and it sheds a new light on some performances, good and bad. And I think also, it may lead to some guys that might be out there that are having better months than you think, especially on the offensive side to kind of fill the gaps, because it just seems like everyone is still searching for offense with how bad it was in May. Maybe now that it's officially June, I know there's a few guys on the Discord throughout, the juice balls come out on June 1, and they will be just disguises it under the fact that, the weather gets warmer and it's summer and offense picks up. Maybe that's true. I don't know if I'm that much of a conspiracy theorist, but it'll be interesting to see. But I'm sure the offense will get better, but these are guys that may be still sitting on your wire. Like, guys are like last year, just thinking about it, like who was added around this time, like Marcell Ozuna after his April and May, right? Like Kerry Carpenter was a guy that went on a tear from like June, July, and August, right? There are plenty of guys that can pick up slack offensively that are sitting out there on the wire right now, that you may be able to add, and getting granular and looking at some process stats, and specifically some changes month over month can lead to finding those guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, for one, I think it would probably be worthwhile doing this same topic at the end of June, just for the reasons you pointed out, Steve, that it almost feels like offense is kind of underway. So it's like, all right, well, if April and May were anomalies in a way, what are we seeing when things begin to normalize in June? Not to mention, I mean, there's just like, I don't know if the conspiracy theory or not, but certain guys like Elliot Ramos from the Giants, tonight he hit another homer and had 4 walks. So he now has 3 homers in his last 4 games. And I think we artfully skipped over him last week with Kyle Bland when we were looking at all the wing acceleration metrics for the bat speed. Pretty sure Ramos was number 1 on the acceleration chart. So I think that's a little bonus name there. I unfortunately don't have any room to shuffle in my home league roster, but yeah, that's one right out of the gate that I bet would be on this list if we did the same thing June over May. But yeah, just a little side note there. I thought that was interesting checking tonight's box scores, but yeah, I think for pitchers, like you said, I mean, the whole thing's flipped around, right? Usually this time of year, we're scrounging for pitchers. This year, most people, I mean, I was texting the guys last place in my league and they're like, sorry, I don't need help with pitching. And I was like, you're right, you don't. But yeah, hitting is where we need help. So I think we're going to start with some pitching categories, but then the whole back half of the show, we're going to get into a lot of batters, right?
And it's crazy too, just think about how many pitching injuries we dealt with earlier in the season too, right?
I know. And it's still just abundance. Now we're starting to get, Scherzer's coming back. I think Jeffrey Springs not too far off. So it's going to get even deeper, I guess, on pitching help. But yeah, I guess talk to me about the spreadsheet though, Steve, because there's a lot of different things we can look at. Obviously, it's April over May, but then how did you run some of the, I guess, just the order as it relates to, like, are we looking at percentages? Are we looking at total numbers that are the differences? Because we've got some leaderboards here that we pulled names from.
Yeah, I'll link the spreadsheet like I normally do. It's just a Google sheet. And I think it's worthwhile and something that isn't done enough in the industry, that like how these things are built and what tools I use to or you can use to build these things. It's pretty easy, and it's not much advanced Excel work or anything needed like that. But what you could do is you can make a custom leaderboard over on Fangraphs, and you can save them, which is great. If you load or save reports when you're looking at leaderboards. So like I just have leaderboards with the categories that I want, like for hitter process stats, pitching process stats, and it's just a leaderboard with like swing metrics, walk, K minus BB, contact percentage, barrel rate, hard hit, WRC plus, things like that. Batted ball, spray direction, like ground ball, line drive, fly ball, and it's just there. It's like 2 clicks away. So if you hit load, save, report, when you do that, when you make a custom leaderboard over at Fangraphs, you do that, and then you could just choose a split tool. And I did one for April, one for May, and then looked at the categories that I cared about for this episode, which was WRC plus, which is like the results stats, like who's had actual good numbers. And then I looked at for hitters, barrel rate, and just did a VLOOKUP for April, for May, for those guys, and just looked at differences. So like you can see who results wise did the best between April and May. Not to anyone's surprise, it's Aaron Judge. He had a horrible 118 WRC plus in April. So like his worst month ever was still 18% better than the league average. And then in May, I don't know if I've ever seen a single WRC plus this high for a single month.
It's like a batting average.
Yeah, 289, like a really good one at that.
Good batting average.
Yeah, so
good Lord,
that's just nuts. But what is crazy, his barrel percentage went down from April to May. I have to double check that just to make sure there.
Like 28 extra base hits and
and like a 50%. And this is barrel over plate appearances too, not just balls in play. So it's a little bit lower than the like ridiculous 50% number that he was running. But yeah, it's just a way to compare how guys did on the surface, and then look for some guys that may be improving under the hood where the results haven't caught up to. Did the same thing for pitchers too. I just use K minus BB as sort of my result metric, and then stuff plus as like the underlying number to see who's had some improvements that, maybe the surface stats haven't caught up with some changes in pitch mix or stuff, or increased velocity, anything that goes into it. So it's interesting. You can compare it, scroll through, sort it, and look at some guys month by month and see who's improved and who may be due to improve with some underlying metrics that have improved from April to May.
Well, we've got the list here of improvers for K minus BB and for Stuff Plus, and we haven't even dug in that deep on some of these guys. So we'll do some real time exercises on kind of exploring what we're seeing under the hood, and then like I said, second half of the show, it's a big shift to hitters, and for that one, we've kind of looked at at least a few names that are rostered in like 30% less to assess, are these quote unquote breakouts legit? And we've got some, we pulled in some of the stuff we were talking about with Kyle Bland with the rolling charts on Pitcher List and everything to see if there's, again, kind of sticky changes that we believe in. But Steve, on the K minus BB, now I'm on the spreadsheet now. I feel like maybe since you've shared this publicly, have you grid locked me out of there? Because now I can't sort by K minus BB.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I have. I did. I did.
That's fine. You're trying to keep Rich out of there.
Let me change. Yeah, I am. Let me change that real quick. I just had some. I just made it so that you can edit now. So yeah, you can sort.
That's nice.
Okay. I can do it too while we're looking at it. This is nice. How the sausage is made behind the.
It's a loose show, man. It's just Van and Steve. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, it's good. Well, we're back.
End of the week. So at least some of the notable names that were on the K minus BB improver list: Cal Quantrill, Seth Lugo, Chris Sale, Dylan Cease, Max Fried, Michael King, Carlos Rodon, Tanner Bybee. So that's to rattle off some of the names. But Cal Quantrill, of course, with any of these lists, it's like there's the jump, right? But then it's like, is it going from very bad to okay, things of that nature, right? But Quantrill is one that in April his K minus BB was 2%, and then in May it's just shy of 16%, but that still is
it's respectable and okay, decent now. It's like closer to pretty much what's like 12 or 14 is average, so slightly above average.
Average. Well, let's do it. I mean, what's when we look at Quantrill, I feel like this is one that. Yeah, like year over year, Steve, I'm generally not in on him, but every now and then you miss certain guys like this where it's like, is there a pitch mix change? What could be leading to this? And at least from last year to this year, we do see that there have been some changes with Cal Quantrill, namely with the splitter that he's ramped up from 12% to 35% usage. So again, like we said, kind of the real-time exercise, just going to shift over to see month over month this season if we've seen a major shift on one thing or another from April to May. Honestly, from the pitch mix standpoint, nothing's really jumping out at me here. And then
the splitter is good, and that's kind of what has
overall, but it was good in April, I guess.
Yeah, it was good in April. Yeah, that's true. I guess from month to month, I guess it's more maybe had a few less games in Colorado, right? That's a big deal with Quantrill. And that's kind of what prevents me from just being in anyway. At all with him.
Yeah.
And it's still just a 9% swinging strike rate, an 18% strikeout rate overall. Sure, some of the ERA indicators are like, okay, like, yeah, it's a 3.84 ERA with 4.3 FIP. 4.5 Sierra, but it just still it would take so much more for me to buy into Colorado. Like, how many guys have made it work in Colorado, like at all? Like,
not even like Herman Marquez.
Herman Marquez, like some years, like
well, and
his stuff was so much better. Like, Quantrill's a nice pitcher, and sure, if this was any other team, maybe I could see him being more like a Toby, or a guy that you would hold on for some of the good matchups. But with
Mhm.
Quantrill, I'm kind of, even with the improved or the increased use in the splitter, that's good. And just slightly improved process numbers underneath the hood. Like, he can't be more than just a guy that you would stream away from home in a decent matchup.
Yeah, it's probably the deepest, or the deeper, like, NFBC leagues where maybe you'd wanna plug him in to rotate him. I'd
Yeah,
imagine his
a decent 2-start week where you have to swallow your pride and start him at home if he has,
yeah.
like, I don't know, the Giants on the road, and then the
Mhm.
Padres at home or something like that. Then
Yeah.
maybe you would want him in a team like that, a league like that. But
Mhm. The only thing I'm seeing is that the sinker has actually gotten more whiffs from April to May and carrying through to June. It's usually not a swing and miss pitch, right? In general, sinkers aren't, but
yeah,
has been really up there. So, I mean, that's what's interesting. They got an away series against the Cardinals, against the Twins, and then it's back home against the Pirates, back home against the Dodgers. So, yeah, I mean, there you go. We spent enough time on Cal Quantrill. Steve,
yeah,
when we
5 more minutes than I thought we would, but that's all right.
when we look at other names on this list, I mean, Chris Sale's been Chris Sale minus the blip start that he just had. The Dylan Cease as well had a huge month, but looking at, like, I mean, Seth Lugo might be one that we need to spend time with just for the season that he's having, and him being a name when you look at this list that we haven't really ordained as like a fantasy stud. You know what I mean? So maybe Seth Lugo is a better one for us to spend a minute on. You want to kind of kick it off with a guy who's got a 2.13 ERA, 9-1 on the season. And the K percentage isn't super high, but for a 34-year-old, we're definitely seeing like a career year from Lugo.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm more out on him than I think you might expect.
Mhm.
You know, it's a career low BABIP by, like, 50 points. His career is 284, or sorry, 34 points from his average. Career 284. It's 250 just this year. It's an 87.4% left on base percentage. Career 77%, so 10% more. And there's just no, like, the home run rate is just 4% down for home run the fly ball. His career is 1.08 homers per nine. It's 0.85 this year. It's the best park. He's really, I mean, it was a reliever, but he was in,
Mhm.
with the Mets for a while in a great ballpark. But for home runs, I think Kansas City may be even better than
Mhm.
Citi Field. Sure, the K minus BB looks good, but it's still just a 21% strikeout rate. The walk rate's always been good, but I would just expect his ERA to finish closer to what the ERA indicators are, which is still really good. Like a 387 Sierra is really good for,
Mhm.
a guy that you either picked up or drafted super late. I know Saris was all over him as like a guy that he liked, like an oatmeal-y late round starter. And that worked out, and that's great for what you got so far in those leagues. And by no means should you know, drop him. And especially in those NFBC leagues, you can't even do anything with it. Like, there's no trading or anything. Like, if I were to be given an offer where I got Seth Lugo as the pitcher, like, I would need something else back, like either to improve like my hitting or get a closer. If I'm giving up like a starter that I like, or just trading for him in general, right? Like, because the writing's on the wall. Like, it's 2.13 ERA. All the ERA indicators are a run and a half higher. The strikeout rate is middling at 20%. Like, there is just regression screaming across the board. While he could still have a good season, like, it's just obvious that I think there might be you're not going to get to pass anyone. Is sort of my thoughts on Lugo there, and I think his last start last night wasn't great either,
Yeah,
right? It was like the
blew
first
a
one.
big
Yeah.
lead. Yeah, I think they're up like 5-0.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you were just to play devil's advocate, like based on something that I've said in the past couple months, one thing I like when I'm like game logging guys is when it clicks, do they have the ability to like be outstanding? And that's where like this year, while the K percentage is like down at like low 20s, he's had a 9 strikeout outing.
Yeah.
He's had a
Yeah.
12 strikeout outing, a 10 strikeout outing. So like I
That's
think
crazy. That's crazy for a guy with a 20%
it
strikeout. So
is.
what are the other games? Just like 0, 1, and 2? Like
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
there's been literally I mean the Orioles 5 1/3 with 1 K.
Yeah. So he's
Yeah,
had
the 2
he's had
strike.
4 games with 8 strikeouts or more. He
Uh-huh.
hasn't had more than 5 strikeouts in any of his other starts.
Yeah, it's nuts, but
And
I mean
okay,
the secondary stuff looks
those starts came against Oakland, at LA, at Toronto, and at Detroit. So like the 4 worst teams he's played, he struck out a bunch of guys.
well,
No
I mean the White
strikeouts. Like
don't forget he's got the White Sox a couple
yeah,
times. You probably should
yeah.
have
And
done
I mean
better on that.
he got 4 strikeouts versus the White Sox, 3 strikeouts versus the White
Yeah.
Sox. So yeah, it's just interesting. But also on the flip side, like I don't mind it. Okay, let's say I wanted to improve my hitting and I wanted to trade an ace to do so.
Mhm.
I don't mind asking for a guy like Lugo back because I know that there's going to be some regression, but I'm still okay with the rest of season 3.8 ERA that
Right.
I'm going to get for it. And I know that manager is okay. Nice. I'm selling high on Lugo, giving up a hitter to get, I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
number 1 starter that you could do that for. So like, I don't mind though, like getting like, I'm not totally against trading for these types of guys. Right.
Mhm.
It's a nice way to look at it because yes, there's going to be regression, but it's still going to be a guy that you want on your team for the rest of the year.
Yeah. And I mean for what it's worth, yeah, he added the slurve last year, and it's kind of unlocked at least this year, the swing and miss on the slider and the curve as well. But all that said, while he is the second biggest riser on the K minus BB from April to May, Steve, you also got the stuff plus risers from April to May, and he's actually gone backwards. So I think if you're just looking at kind of some of these, pitching model things, and they kind of are in line with you that it's not that exciting under the hood. But yeah, that's Lugo. I guess anything else you want to add on any of these names, because I do want to switch over to stuff plus improvers, talk about some of those guys while we're still talking pitching.
Yeah.
What do you think?
One guy I want to hit on real quick was Michael King. I
Yeah.
know there's been some blow ups and there's been a lot, like especially on the pitch list Discord, there's been a lot of like talk of like King being 1 start away from being dropped after that, 6 earned run outing at home versus Colorado, which was right after the 11 strikeout game versus the Dodgers. So it's like it's been very frustrating, but I think there's been improvement under the hood month over month with the strikeout minus walk rate. The stuff plus is still not great. It doesn't jump off the page, but it's held steady basically. A slight improvement from April to May. But I think that's kind of a product of his fastball velocity dropping because he's become a full-time starter. He's talked about that that he's been more conscious of having to pitch the full year as a starter, not where he just did it from August and September and was kind of like just a 5-inning guy. Like he wasn't even really a full starter, so he didn't have to preserve for the 6th and 7th like he's doing this year. And I think he's kind of figuring it out slowly but surely. Like, yeah, one of those bad starts was the start in Korea in the middle of March. So it's basically, still in the middle of spring training for most of these guys. He had a 7 walk outing the first start of the season. And then since that hasn't walked more than 3 guys in an outing, and hasn't walked more than 2 since the middle of May. So I think, despite some of the hiccups and frustrations with the overall line and having a cushy matchup go the wrong way, like he still had 7 strikeouts and 2 walks in that inning, in that game versus Colorado. So, just looking at strikeouts and walks, he was good. I know that's not it's not really a category
right.
In your league if you give up 6 earned runs, so it doesn't really matter. But I think that there is a buying opportunity here with King, because there has been some frustrating outings, and I think he's slowly starting to figure it out, and a guy that I would be very interested in acquiring if he's still gettable in any leagues.
Yeah, I mean the 4-seamer, like, I guess sorry, I was scrolling through trying to find if he was a chalkboard, original chalkboard, because I was big on.
Oh yeah, this is your guy too.
But
Yeah,
he was
I'm
not.
sure
He
you're
was
not
not
going
a
to pass up.
chalkboard.
Surprising.
I passed him up for one I'm very proud of, which was AJ Puck, which we'll get to at the end of the season, Steve. But I don't know if you mentioned. So, are we worried at all that it looks like the velocity's down a little bit on like the 4-seam, a little bit on the sinker? Is that what you were saying, that like that's to be expected with kind of extending him? That's the only thing that I'd be a little bit worried about. But honestly, some of the best stuff that he has to offer is more in like the changeup and stuff, right? So
I think so. And sinkers and changeups are notoriously, degraded by stuff plus. Like, it's still a decent way, I think, to get by, especially when he has, a 4-seamer that has a 22% whip percentage, a changeup that has a 37% whip percentage, a slider at 30. So like he can get swings and misses on multiple pitches, which is sort of what you need to be able to attack both sides of the plate when he has that changeup, the sweeper, and a good enough fastball and sinker to get by. So, yeah, I mean, he's, relying more. He's throwing the changeup more this season. That's a good thing when it's his best pitch by whiff percentage. So, I think that, maybe it's a week too late. Like you kind of wanted to approach the Michael King manager after that Colorado start. But who knows? Like the overall line still doesn't like jump off the page. But and some of the ERA indicators are a bit high, even for a guy with a 3.82 ERA. Like FIP has a 4.58, but the Sierra's in line with the ERA. So I'm for it. I mean, he still has 11% swing strike rate, a K rate that 25%. I don't think we're going to get that 29-30 that we saw last year with the Yankees, but again, I think that's sort of to be expected with the switch to the bullpen. And how much of that walk rate came in the first few starts when he walked, was walking the world, and now has figured it out. Like you see that's a big reason why he's been an improver from April to May. For K-BB, he's just stopped walking guys.
Yeah, I mean, like that 3-star, like if you can throw away the most recent one, or even it was a good start, but against the Royals, who have been great, he was in Cincinnati, the Dodgers were in there when he had that 11K. So it's like, yeah, that rocky road is brutal, but yeah, otherwise, I wouldn't be shocked if he started figuring it out. I was creeping over to the list to see what Mr. Nick Pollock has for Michael King, because it is an interesting one. He's got him at 42 in front of some names we've talked about, like Ronaldo Lopez, Reese Olson. He's got him in front of Bryce Miller, Cutter Crawford, Hunter Green, ahead of Brian Wu. So definitely, I mean, Nick's got him pegged here as pretty much like an SP4. Does that feel right, Steve? He's behind a name like Seth Lugo at 38, behind Carlos Rodon. Just curious if that feels in the ballpark.
I would take him above Seth Lugo, below Rodon. I think Rodon is another guy that's on this list that, I don't know if we need to get into, but he's actually 3 spots behind Michael King in K minus BB improvement. He is up to 18.18% in May, and it does count the first few days of June too, just because April was those few days in March too. And Rodon went tonight, and I think was like 7-0 for strikeouts and walk, maybe even more. I think he might have 9 strikeouts.
Well, and Rodon, unlike the other two we've talked about, Steve, Rodon's stuff plus has jumped from 115 in April to 122 in May.
Yeah,
the
nine strikeouts, no walks tonight. So that came on SPB is
climbing even more,
going up. Yeah, so that buy low window has slammed shut. I was fully out on Rodon.
Same.
Just because the whiffs weren't there, the velocity wasn't there, and it's just he looks like he did in San Francisco and Chicago the last few starts. So I mean, he said it himself. He's like, I feel comfortable pitching here in New York. Like,
talk about boom bust.
Yeah.
Like,
he would be. Out of all the names that we've talked about, he's the guy that I believe in the most as far as the improvement, just because he showed that ceiling before. None of those other guys have. Like, he's shown SP1 potential, and when a guy who's shown SP1 potential starts to do it again, you have more reason to believe. I think so. Rodon would be the guy that I would go after. Not that you can anymore, especially after the start tonight.
Well, let's jump over, Steve, because I want to make sure we leave some time for hitters, because that's the need area. But let's jump over quick to Stuff Plus improvers after this ad break, and then we'll switch over to hitters after that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, Stuff Plus improvers, just to rattle off some of these names. We got Bailey Falter, Brandon Pfaadt, Carlos Rodon, as we mentioned, George Kirby, Michael Wacha, Zach Wheeler, Marcus Stroman, Joe Ryan, and Nestor Cortez. So when I look at this list, my first reaction is that Brandon Pfaadt jumps out.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because topical from fresh off of episode before last, where we had Mr. Lance Brozdowski on, which is a fantastic show if you guys missed it. Lance's Substack is such a great tool. And just this past week, he had talked about how Pfaadt might have fixed his home run issues that he's had. And he talked about how basically the strikeout rate has jumped in April from 20% up to 28%. So very substantial, some slight ticks in velocity. But yeah, and then of course he did what he does and busted out all the location charts where he's changed his approach to righties on sinkers, where he's kind of throwing down in the zone a little bit more as opposed to inside. So a little bit of an approach change. But overall, Pfaadt was a name that we were so big on last year. Sadly, I was kind of burnt on it because I stashed him for what seemed like months, and then he finally came up and it didn't all click. He kind of had a bit of a resurgence, but this seems like it could still be a buy low opportunity because the 4.32 ERA, the 108 whip, and yeah, about a K per inning, which is nice. But when you look at a lot of the stuff, again, kind of like under the hood and what he's done lately, it's looked a lot better with a 9 strikeout outing against the Reds, 7 Ks against the Dodgers, and then his last start against the Mets, 8 strikeouts as well. So definitely seems like he's starting to tap into the K rate that we were so excited about when he was in the what was it? Because he was in was he in the PCL?
Yes, he was. So there was like,
and his strikeout rate was insane, and his ERA was too. So anyway, Pfaadt is the one that jumps out for me. Your thoughts on Brandon Pfaadt? Anything you want to add there? Or is there any other name on this list that you want to jump in on?
No, Pfaadt was the one I wanted to talk about too. And there's been a slight pitch mix change. He's started to rely on that sweeper more, which is good because that's his best pitch. Sure, there's been some questions about how he can handle lefties. They kind of used him as like a righty specialist in the playoffs and thrived in that role. Really protected him versus the tough lefty matchups, but starting to figure it out a little bit. Obviously, with how these last few starts have gone down. I mean, I'm pulling up the splits now, but
that sweeper jump from 30 to 37% from May to June, which isn't what we're talking about, but that's now he's I mean, that's one start. So
lefties are still slashing 282, 318, 458 versus him as compared to righties 181, 220, 226, 306. So it's night and day. But like if he could just hold his own versus lefties, and obviously, it's not the worst thing in the world. There's a third of the league or so is lefties. But yeah, I'm afraid that if he does run into a team that or a few teams in a row that just stack lefties versus him, that there could be a stretch like April, right? Like a righty mashing team. That is something that I'm, keeping in the back of my mind. But
it's a great point.
It all looks good under the hood as far as like strikeout minus walk and stuff improvement. So I'm not surprised that he's taking this big a jump and stuff, because he is throwing his best pitch more. Like that's like the number one thing that leads to these improvements. And it's encouraging considering he's a guy ahead of guys that like Carlos Rodon and George Kirby, guys that, Rodon's becoming comfortable pitching in New York. Kirby's a notorious tweaker, like Lance Rosowski talked about when he was on with us a few weeks ago. And he's like working through, fine-tuning his arsenal at all times. It's just, I would just be a little bit tepid because I'm not fully sure if that lefty issue is fully solved yet for Fott. Like, I don't know what, if there was more reliance on the changeup, which there hasn't been. It's gone down in percentage to handle platoon splits. Even the curveball, that percentage has gone down. He's thrown more sinker. He's thrown more sweeper. Like,
that's what Nick's saying is what's the third third pitch? And I guess technically his third pitch is the sinker, but it's not. It doesn't generate whiffs.
It doesn't generate whiffs versus the opposite side. Sure. Hey, if it's something you get a strike, that's not a four seamer, right? It's another option too there.
He's going to. I mean, the whiffs are decent on the changeup. That's probably the path forward. But he's just 25.
He's only throwing it. He was throwing it 11% of the time in May. It was just one start in June, and he only threw one of them. So that's bringing down the average. Maybe there's just wasn't a lot of lefties. Yeah, he was mostly four seam and sweeper and sinker to lefties there too. So yeah, I mean, he does throw the four seamer to lefties a lot, which is an option, and it's not bad. It's at 40. It's 94. So maybe he can get by.
Yeah, he's got the Padres next, so that'll be another test for
yeah.
70% rostered, and number 80 on Nick's list. So yeah,
I think that's a little low. I think that's
what I think too. Right? Around that Spencer Schwellenbach behind behind him, behind Michael Lorenzen. Like, I'd move him up.
I'd say like the 60s is probably fair, right?
Let's count Quantrill's in there. Come
on. I would much rather have Brandon Fott.
I'd take Fott over Quantrill. Yeah,
for sure.
All right, so let's jump to bats, Steve, and looking at maybe you want to start with barrels or WRC plus?
Let's stick with the results stats first. So let's look at WRC plus improvers first.
Okay,
and then we'll
so
look at some of the process improvers in barrel.
So like you hinted at, Steve, for WRC Plus improvers, that's where Mr. Aaron Judge, of course, leads off the list with a batting average, a great, Stephen Kwan-esque batting average, 289 in May. Number 2 on the list, Nolan Gorman, who, no surprise, and I'm sure in June it looks even better, but he jumped from 78 WRC Plus to 203. Then you got Corey Seager. Ouch on the timing on that.
Yeah.
Apologies to any of the managers out there. Jose Ramirez, Randy Arozarena, Josh Bell, an interesting one, but one of those that's very bad in April, from a 63 up to a 140 in May. So we'll hit on Bell briefly. Vlad from a 102 to 174. Shea Langoliers, that's an NFBC one for me as well. Steve, been riding that hot hand from 77 to 142 WRC plus. Then you got names like Bregman, Yandy Diaz, Gleyber Torres, Castellano, and JJ Bleday, which is a name that we want to talk about a little bit. But yeah, anything, I know some of these are on the list. Are there ones that we're not going to hit on that you would like to zoom in on? Some of these guys are usual suspects. Other ones are, I'd say, like Gleyber and Castellanos, like you're glad to see it, right?
Yeah, and did we do like an April underperformer show where we were like looking at like
A Rosarena? I know a Rosarena
like,
was
and
on.
I think we chatted like, or when we were talking about it, it was like, honestly, like just close your eyes and buy these guys, or like we did
Castellanos
results versus projections, like the biggest gap between rest of season projections and results.
Yeah,
and it was basically this list. It was Bregman, it was Torres, it was Castellanos. So like a Rosarena was like number 1, and there was like some guys that were like, yeah, there's no like nothing in the barrel rate, nothing in the plate skills that back this up, other than the fact that these guys have this on the back of their baseball card. And it's kind of just a testament to that process, right? Like,
oh, I wish I would have thrown out more Bregman.
Yeah, any of these guys, right? Like,
Bregman
even still, Rosarena's like numbers still look horrible, and it's not great with a 119 WRC plus in May. And sure, like 19% better than league average is still probably translates to a mid to low 700s OPS for May. I'll look it up real quickly at what a Rosarena's OPS was in May, but still, like, it's just like sometimes you got to just, despite it, there's being no indication to buying a bounce back, just looking at the projections, just trusting the projections is something that you really probably would do well.
He's the best one
if you did that. Yeah.
I think he's the best one to look at right now, Rosarena, because the average is still 169, man. But he's got 8 homers, 7 steals. He's been caught 4 times on the path. So like he's gonna be it's like all the sexy 5x5 stats, but the ratios are killing the manager right now. So I'm pulling him up on
it was a 699 OPS in May for Rosarena. Sure, that this also counts, the first 3 games in May where he has a 208 WRC plus. So it's probably a little bit higher than that, but still, it goes to show that offense is just you have to change your scale a little bit for offense there. Yeah,
man, I'm looking at his rolling charts are just dreadful. So the power is the one thing that is like well above MLB average, and it's like been exceptional during this run in May, but the contact ability is so low. The decision value from like plate discipline standpoint peaked in early May, and then just as high as it peaked, it plummeted since then, and now it's back up at a peak. So maybe that's the play. But
he's never a guy for this though, right? Like he never has a good process. Like he doesn't really walk.
No, but eventually, I mean,
he does. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But I don't know. I mean, that is the question though, because he's like a pull power guy unless he just goes oppo, but he hits to the corners, to the alleys, and it's like I don't know, man. I think this is the time. I guess here's our double or nothing. Like, do we buy low on Randy Arozarena for the rest
Yeah,
of the way?
yeah. He's the guy that you can get caught holding the bag on, just because the profile seems like it was shaky, to say the least, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I think I'd still be interested in buying low on Arozarena. Like, I think that you're still going to see a line maybe a little bit worse than 2023. It's just tough because the steals aren't there. Like, it's just 7
They
so
come
far
in,
for
yeah, they come in
they
bunches.
they do come in bunches. They do come in bunches. So there could be a week where he gets 7 too, and all of a sudden he's on pace for 22 again, like he was last year. Um,
I think you
the
can get
homers
it.
should be there. Low homer 20
Mhm.
homer total, I think, is what you expect. And of course, I think there's going to be some batting average improvement, just as there has been in May and continuing here in June. I would.
Here's the
The
plus.
rest of season projections are 15 homers, 15 steals, 250,
Okay.
240 to 250. Like,
That's worth buying,
I'd
and I
buy
think
that.
you could get him, man. The last month he's batting 200. The last 2 weeks he's batting 200. Here's the plus side if you're thinking about the buy. In his last 4 games, he has 6 walks and just 2 strikeouts. For a guy like a Rosarena, that's very encouraging, even if it's a
Yeah.
super small sample size.
And
What?
hey, I mean, he's a streaky guy. He like here's another tool. Derek Van Riper brought it up on rates and barrels. If you are on the Fangraphs player page, you go to splits tools, and then group by month. Like, you could see like all of the months of Randy Rosarena's career, and like, you know, there's months where Rosarena has a 36 WRC plus. Like, his April May wasn't even the worst. It was July last year. Like, he's had September and October's the last 2 years were below average. March, April last year he had a 47 WRC plus, but then, you know, he's had a 197 in August of 2022. Like, he goes scorched earth, otherworldly,
Mhm.
for months at a time. Like he's capable of doing it. It's just sort of the nature of how his seasons are sometimes shaped. So I'm still betting that there is 1 or 2 months, like he had in May and August of last year. We had 100, 150 WRC plus and an OPS of 860 in both months too there. So I think I'm still in. I'd double down and buy Randy Rosarena.
So I need an outfield in my home league, Steve. Let's just play a quick exercise. Would you
Mm-hmm.
trade? And I have an abundance of pitching. The manager
Yep.
who has a Rosarena needs pitching rarely. Would you say between like the
Let's do it
staff?
right now. Let's
Staff
fire it
has
a
been good.
text. Let's
The
fire it a
staff has
text.
been good. So I got Fromber, Pavetta. I got Flaherty, Ronaldo, Lopez, Luis Heel. So I've found a lot of money with Ronaldo, Luis Heel, and Jack Flaherty. Do you think? I mean, I
Flaherty has
He
the back, right? So that kind of throws it out right now,
right.
and it's
So
still
Ronaldo, do you
unknown.
think Ronaldo Lopez could get the job done?
I do that trade right now. Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
would do that, okay?
I
Because
would.
that's
Well, I
probably
would.
the one.
Yes. I
Heel
don't.
has been
Yeah.
insane, dude.
He'll
I
no.
don't
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
could do that.
He'll. You kind of just gotta ride it out just because he's been so good. Um, Ronaldo's been great too. But I would definitely.
It's kind of a
Definitely send
sell
that offer.
high.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. Well, let's jump to Barrel, and then we got a few just some names we
Mhm.
can wrap quickly with. But Barrel improvers, you got from April to May, you got Jose Altuve, C.J. Abrams, Salvador Perez, Anthony Volpe, Fernando Tatis, O'Neill Cruz, Yordan Alvarez, Christian Walker, and Bo Bichette. Man, is it good seeing Bo Bichette on any sort of list that's good. And I don't even roster him much. It's just at some point we were looking at the Blue Jays being like a cellar dweller offense. So that one is promising to see him go from 8.5% up to like 11.7%. Looking at some of these other ones, I mean, Jordan, you knew it was coming. O'Neal Cruz is now, he went from, great to outstanding. Trying to see if there's any other ones from that list. I guess, I mean, Altuve, it's worth noting, went from the 6.2 up to 13%. So definitely the breakout there. And his WRC plus did not follow. So maybe that presents a little bit of a buy low with Altuve. I haven't looked as closely to what his production's doing, but 287 on the year, 9 homers, 8 steals. But yeah, in the month of May, just a 237 average with a 573 OPS.
Yeah, seems like that's pretty unlucky, right? And
June has been low too. So Altuve, there might be a little bit of a window there.
I think so for sure. I wish I got more Altuve. He was one of my main targets in the offseason that I wanted to go after just because second base, and it just seemed like a nice like third, fourth round hitting target, and I didn't get enough of him.
I don't have a single share, unfortunately.
And if there was an opportunity to get back in on Altuve, I would jump all over it. I think that he's also a guy that doesn't live off this high power rate. Like he's always a guy that is referenced when you bring up a savant or pitcher list player page that doesn't necessarily light up red. And
he gets the most from the pulls.
He gets the most from the pulls and chases, and is able to, like, one of the only guys ever that's, since like Vlad Sr., that's able to hit like any pitch, no matter where. So his chase rate is always ridiculously high, or one of the higher ones in the league. And despite that, he's still able to hit, win batting titles, and in recent years turned into like this power hitter that's able to pull. Like he could just do things with the bat that you shouldn't expect from other people. So the fact that he is barreling up the ball more, that's funny, right? Like it's probably one of his best months by barrels and worst by results.
It's crazy.
Right? It's all right, go back to not barreling the ball. It doesn't make any sense.
It seems like that's the buying opportunity for sure, though. Yeah. So there's your 2 trade targets on this show: is Arozarena and also Altuve.
Yeah, one really buy low, one like. You're still gonna have to give up a bunch for Altuve, but
for sure.
Target,
Well, I know we ran super long with Kyle last time. This one, I think we're on pace a little bit more, but we'll take our second ad break, and then we got to get to a few of these names that we're going to do some deep dives on that are more free agent kind of wire rosterships. So we'll get to those guys right after this break. Okay, so Steve. I mentioned it. I need some offense. I think a lot of people do. And while I've got Yoshida stashed for a week or so, the first name that really jumped out at me from the WRC Plus improvers was JJ Bleday, who, at first I was like, really? Am I chasing that? Is it low batting average? I had him pegged for a high strikeout rate in my mind. I know I always bring up that I think Spore was the first person I ever heard talking about Bleday, was a big Bleday guy. Mm-hmm. But in the month of May, it looked good for Bleday with the 252 average and 887 OPS, 5 homers, 17 runs, 13 RBIs, and the plate discipline, 13% walk rate, 17% K rate. And most of these guys, you can kind of look at the BABIP next to it, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, they had a 400 BABIP, just a 273 BABIP for Bleday. So looking closer at this one, Steve went over to the rolling charts to do the diligence, and loving what I was seeing there with the decision value was through the roof. It dropped a little bit, but it's back up. Probably the most positive story is that both the contact, the power is always great, but in this month, it was like far and away better than MLB average. And then on the contact ability, which is the struggle, typically he got it up to around MLB league average, which is where it's staying. So across the board, just looking at Bleday, I was kind of like, all of these paint the right kind of trend lines. And a guy who's just 20% rostered, he's still kind of at that, some of the sheen is worn off on his prospect pedigree, but he's still 26 years old. 8.2% barrel rate is nothing to like write home about, but I think there is pop here. So I'm interested in Blade and curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, he is one of my most rostered hitters in NFBC. I have 3 shares of him out of 5 leagues, I think, that I'm on there. So
Very nice.
Saris liked him a lot as like a late round sleeper slash, outfield 6 or whatever. And there has been times in April where I was close to cutting him, and I glad I didn't. So yeah, I know, and it was a popular name. Just like we were begging for Miami to play him more after he was a prospect and came up there, and there was some interest when he was traded to Oakland. And even last year, he only got 82 games at the major league level. But I'm interested, man. I think there's, anytime you can barrel the ball above league average and strike out less than 20% of the time, like you're on a short list of guys that I'm interested for deeper leagues and deeper outfield spots. But this is like I'm hoping out of this list that we have here of these guys, like it's like these are guys that's like, all right, well, we talked about this guy in June. Like, I'm hoping that a few of these guys could be guys that are on rosters the rest of the year. And I think, even in like 12 team, your home leagues sort of thing. And I think that Blade could possibly be one of them. Like, we talked about offense and how slow it's been. But he's got an 800 OPS even right now, and that's good for 131 WRC plus. It's crazy if you're 800 OPS and you're 30% better than the league average. That just goes to show how bad offense has been.
Yeah.
The first 2 months of the season. So, yeah, man, I like it. I think there's a lot to like here. These charts that you pulled and have rolled up showed some of the improvements. Like there was a bit of a dip, but he's starting to pick it up as far as the decisions he's making, the ability to make contact, which, like you said, was a question. So
hitting third,
I like that. Hitting third,
too.
like that offense isn't too bad, like especially versus right-handed pitching. I think the A's have been one of the better teams in the league sneakily. So yeah, I think that there's potential here for, I think, Blade to be sort of a long-term more than just a hot bat here. I'm not saying go out and like trade for him, but pick him up in certain leagues where he might be dropped.
Five outfielders,
and who knows? You might want to roster him for longer than just like a stretch on the road at Cincinnati for Blade or something like that.
Yeah, just peeking at the schedule here.
Toronto, San Diego coming up.
Okay, yeah, I mean, up and down. Twins, I guess Twins have been good from a pitching standpoint. Royals, but yeah, I mean, overall, I just think 20% rostered. Outfield's been kind of a mess this season. Definitely 5 outfield.
A guy with an 800 OPS shouldn't be rostered in just 20% of leagues. Right.
Yeah. So make it happen, especially with the plate discipline that looks good. So moving to a guy that, we don't have to spend a ton of time on Nolan Gorman here, Steve, because 79% rostered, not extremely actionable, but number 2 behind Aaron Judge. My question is, like, in terms of just assessing this, he had a 37% K rate in May. So, I'm hearing Scott White on CBS, who's kind of saying like, yeah, congrats if you got Nolan Gorman, but this is also, the high for Nolan Gorman. And you turn around, there's going to be a big low just like this. And it's like, yes, I usually think that as well. However, it is interesting to me that the O swing has been cleaned up quite a bit. And it's like the overall swing aggression has gone way, way, way down. And there was an interesting tweet that I saw as well at Jacob E_STL talking about how he's also on a month over month bat speed riser. Nolan Gorman was one of the ones that was basically having faster swings from April to May. So in my mind, again, kind of painting a narrative a little bit, but like being more patient, I guess you could call it, or less aggressive at the plate. And then also a faster bat. Of course, there's a little bit of luck in just kind of the batted ball data, but man, as anyone as hot as Gorman is right now, just trying to diagnose, like, do you think this is a sell high if you're a Gorman manager, or are you just kind of riding out the fact that, he could be a 30, 35 homer guy?
I mean, I think this is sort of who he is. Like, this is exactly what he did last year. Gorman, like using that splits tool over on Fangraphs, like his April of last year, he had a he was great to start last year. That's right. He started off super hot. But his June of last year had a 22 WRC plus. His May of last year, he had a 155. This year his May was 233, which is obviously that this has been the best month of his career, but that was preceded by a 78 WRC plus in April and May. Like, this is just what he is going to do. He's going to have extreme ups and downs, but at the end of the year, like, he's going to be this 230 to 240 hitter with 35 homers with, which is really good. Like, I haven't touched him in redraft in like NFBC leagues, and I have, I think, 2 or 3 shares of him, and like I never would, even with that horrible month. Like, you can't drop him. In my home league, I did drop him in April, and yeah, sure, I missed this May, but I also missed 3 weeks of a 100 batting average with 1 homer, right? That would have been brutal to carry out. And there's probably going to be another month, maybe not that bad, but there's going to be another month where this is just what happens with guys that strike out 30 to 40% of the time. When they're in one and hitting a bunch of homers, they're going to have a month that's crazy. When they're in a funk, it's going to be an absolute zero. And sort of with guys that don't provide steals, like, that's kind of the difference between Nolan Gorman, the 10th rounder, and like, I don't know, like Ellie, the 2nd rounder, right? Because when Ellie's in this slump, he's going to steal 7 to 10 bases in a month. Gorman, when he was in his slump, he had 2 or 3 homers, 2 steals, and a 600 OPS. Like, you can't really live with that. So, yeah, maybe in head-to-head leagues it might be a sell high because there's going to be a month. But honestly, like,
yeah, it'll get
whatever.
cool.
Like, ride it out. Like, win, have him win you homers and RBIs and OPS this week, right? Like, and just know that there's going to be another cold stretch coming. That's just the nature of this player.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the only other thing, and I can't even wrap my head around why or how it makes sense, but that the swing aggression has never been this low, which seems so counterproductive for someone who's a hacker power guy. I just, it's just pointing out, like, his 2023 rolling charts look nothing lower than like 0% or 1. And this is like, trending down by like minus 10% on the swing aggression. So it's just, I guess,
hey, it's working. It's working.
Yeah.
And hey, maybe that's a reason why there's something different. I don't know.
Maybe it's a waiting for your pitch, even if it means.
But he's still striking. He's still striking out, a ton of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And
what was his strikeout rate? And
37%. 37%.
Yeah. So despite that, like, it's still, it's still up there.
I might dig in. I wonder if there's like basically like called strike. Like, is it actually his whiff rate month over month that's still that high, or is he watching pitches? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if he's watching pitches, maybe like he knows what he's gonna take over the fence. Let me
Yeah. I
just
mean, he
do
did. It was the best walk. It was the second best walk rate of his career.
So hold on. Let's
By
look at this.
month.
So let's do swing and miss by month in 2024. So it's dropped. The swing and miss rate has dropped from, like, I'm on Savant. So whiffs was 37% in April, 40% in May, but down to 23% in June. But that's
So a lot less swing and miss. Yeah.
games. It's 5 games. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on Gorman. The one I really wanted to talk about, and it's not Josh Bell. We can hit on him if we want to, but him. The more I looked at him, the more it was like, yeah, it's a little bit more of the same with a 372 BABIP. The one that I was excited about, Steve, who I actually picked up in my home league, was Ty France, just 18% rostered on Yahoo. His WRC plus jumped 90 to 132, which was 17th highest on the month over month list. Had a nice May, nothing insane, but a 278 average, 826 OPS, 5 homers, 16 RBIs. But he was a driveline guy in the off season, which is why I remember he was like deep in like the recess of my mind of, like, on your DC 50s, somebody you could grab late. But so seeing this breakout was kind of interesting to me. And then just digging a little bit deeper, like his decision value chart looked really bad in May. So I was like, how do you have a bad decision month, but the good results? And then came across this where it was like basically his O swing just completely plummeted, and his WOBA, his slug skyrocketed, and his power also peaked to the highest on his rolling charts, the highest point it's ever been on in his career at 128. So it's like O swing down, power peak. The results are starting to follow a little bit. It was enough for me to say, okay, for a guy who, again, is hitting in like the top 3 or 4 in that order, I know it's not a great place to hit. It was enough to say, okay, 18%. Like, the guy had, I think, the 4th best out of all first basemen. He was like the 4th best first baseman in May. And there's a little bit of a narrative to follow. So I think Ty France, we'll see tonight. Let's see what he did. Or is this game still going? 0 for 2. So that's not helping the argument. But
Yeah. Joey Estes was throwing a perfect game through 6 innings for the A's there. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if you got anything to add on France, but just seemed interesting to me. And he's been hot lately, past couple of weeks, with like a 919 OPS and all this narrative to support it.
Yeah, no, I was very interested heading into the offseason, like just around the narrative with France going to drive line, trying to add bat speed. It was like Lars Nootbaar-esque as far as like the hype around that sort of stuff. And it really hasn't come together, but it's starting to look like it is now for him. I think my Fangraphs is down, so I was trying to pull up some stats. But let me go to Pitcher List to pull up some of France's numbers, like you should, just because we have the best player pages in the game.
Well, his season line 7 homers.
Yeah. I want to just compare some of the advanced stuff or underlying metrics under the hood to this year. Like, he's doubled his barrel rate from basically 5 to 10 this year. He's hitting the ball harder. His ideal contact rate is actually still around the same, which is pretty interesting. You would think with the batted ball metrics improving like that, there would be some more there. But he's getting unlucky by X average and things under the hood. So I would expect to see some of these results and these process stats lead to better results for France. It just looked like he was pretty unlucky through the first month and a half through the season. It's finally looking like it's coming to fruition this year, or at least the last 2 weeks with those good process, right? Like baseball is a funny thing. You can do everything right for a long time, and then it still may not lead to results right away, at least. So, yeah, I like France. I liked him a lot going into the season, and I think that I think France, Blade, all of these guys have potential to be, guys that could help carry some of your offense. I do wish that he would pull the ball a little more and hit less ground balls. It's a 47% ground ball rate, just a 35% pull rate. The pull rate would be the worst of his career, where he pulled 40% last year. So we can kind of marry the two, the spray direction and with the, more of the hard hits and barrels that he's running into this year. Maybe there could be even more potential. I think that was like 21 when he had that like 25 or so homer seasons.
Yeah, that's what you're chasing.
I think that could be something that maybe could happen again for Ty France this year, just because the underlying process looks good. Yeah, and you like to see that mix with that O swing, right? Like that's great. Like the O swing on this chart that we have up on the stream, like the O swing is just on a steep decline down and up goes the Woban slug. Like that's good to see.
That's what you want. Yep. And we'll close out the show, Steve, with just searching Twitter. We got at Mackenzie_Dugan. Since Taylor Swift started her shows in France for the Eras Tour, Ty France for the Mariners has a 150 WRC plus and 858 OPS. Oh man,
that is the hard hitting analysis that you come to WAF for.
There you go. Yep. Go out, run to the waiver wire and get Ty France because of the Eras Tour. Wow. Okay. Well, Steve, that rounds us out. Any closing thoughts here? I feel like this is a helpful show. There's a little bit of everything, a little bit of pitching, a little bit of wire, a little bit of buy low, but it was fun, man, and nice to just exhale. Fantastic guests, but when you got guests like that, you really got to be plugged in. This one we can, let loose a little bit, but it was a fun show.
Yeah. Dive into a spreadsheet and talk about some names that we're interested in and do it off the cuff, right? That's what we're here for, and what we do best. So it's good to be back just with you. I'm sure we'll get some more guests coming up too. Those are always great too, and to get the insight, there. So thanks for tuning in as always. It's great. As always, we're always here every Wednesday night, usually around like 9:30, 10 Eastern. We try to go. So man, I don't know. I'm hoping that this could be this episode, and then the one that we did earlier on with the projections could be like, all right, like these are the shows that hey, we talked about these guys when they
come back and
200.
Yep. Come back and look at them.
So maybe we got to check in on our JJ Boudet shares in September to see how we did. But
absolutely,
I don't know. Maybe offense is going to get better. It's starting to, I think, a little bit. But here's the hoping, and maybe some of these guys will help do that. Just because you need roster turnover too. Like there's guys that unexpectedly carry your offense through the summer months, especially when the focus shifts from fantasy baseball to the other fantasy sport that won't be named in July and August. Yeah.
No, it's been a slow bats start to the year, but it's hopefully you guys are still locked in. Like we said at the start, this is still when you can make a serious impact on your leagues, there's plenty of room for climbing up the standings and everything. So it's a good time of the year. June is a great fantasy baseball month. You guys can join us every Thursday.
They're all great.
They are great. But August, you start to get a little bit of it's the grind. We're not at the grind yet. I mean, it's still action, but you're not. The fatigue hasn't set in yet. Yeah. So yes, if you guys are enjoying the show, please go out, give us a rating and review. It goes a long way. Otherwise, we'll be here every Thursday throughout the whole season. And like Steve said, we got the live streams now on Wednesday nights around 9:00 Eastern, and you guys can see those on Twitter at WinsAbovePod. As always, I'm at Van_verified. Steve is at Stav8818. But that rounds us out for episode 142, April to May Improvers. Thanks for talking baseball with us, guys.
Thanks, guys. Later.